more than 2 years later, here we are. But clearly, both sides are digging in their heels. Nobody's willing to budge. And it's also interesting. Ambassador Sajanha referred to those areas, those territories in Ukraine that Russia has annexed. Interestingly, Putin is appealing to voters in the annexed parts of Ukraine to also cast their ballot in this election. And on the 18th of March, he is expected to hold a rally to mark 10 years of the annexation of Crimea. And many believe that will also double up as his victory rally. Okay, let me take this to Professor Swaran Singh. Professor Swaran Singh, um, of course, we know that President Putin loves to dangle the nuclear threat before the West every few weeks. Just earlier this week, he said, of course, Russia is ready for a nuclear war with the West. Now, many believe that another term in office is only going to embolden President Putin further, who is absolutely in no hurry to end this war. But given that there is not a single individual on the ballot who is opposed to this war, can we really say that this war, I beg your pardon, that this election could be a referendum on the Ukraine war in any way? Do you see a significant protest vote being cast here?
Neha, first of all, let me say that this year, 2024, is extremely interesting and historic, particularly for elections.
Absolutely.
So, for discipline of psychology, which is study of elections, estimates are between 40 to 70 nations might experience elections in this year. And the big ones, of course, will be India and United States and Russia that we are discussing now. I think first thing to underline is that despite enormous control that President Putin has, and we are all saying that the outcome of elections is known beforehand to all of us, the support has been so far between 67 to 75% of votes in favor of President Putin or Prime Minister Putin earlier. So that there has been a certain sort of indication of not acceptance of him as a candidate by a certain category of voters. Now, what makes it interesting, as you mentioned, this is happening in middle of 2 years of Ukraine war. And that is going to be an overarching influence in that sense as to how that influences the voters. And supposing the vote share, we can imagine going down 50% for President Putin, according to constitution, then there will be a second round of election, which again will have enormous implications for his leadership in that sense. So there is already not 100%, 90% support, but 60, 70% support. This could potentially change. And I think therefore, that's my third point, therefore President Putin's primary focus has been to not allow candidates who are opposing his war in Ukraine to be contestants, because that could kind of give rise to this anti-war sentiment. So he's made sure that both candidates, Boris Nadezhdin and of course another TV journalist, Yekaterina Dontsova, who were apparently openly against the war, have been disqualified on very simple technical grounds of signatures and so on. And there are few candidates still in the fray to just make it look like a contested election rather than unopposed elections in that sense. But yes, there are going to be serious challenges for President Putin in actually winning that election, and particularly in Crimea, in eastern Ukraine, in Luhansk and Donetsk. How voters behave is going to be carefully watched by several people around the world. We are hearing that already there are law and order related violence happening in eastern Ukraine now.
Okay.
And how that is going to influence the outcomes. Voters are also going to be this time unusually impacted upon not just only Ukraine war, but also very closely related brandishing of nuclear weapons.
Yes.
Indicating that Russia could restart nuclear testing. The whole foreign policy isolation that Russia is facing in terms of impact on energy exports and overall trade and economy. So voters are going to be really impacted upon with series of these things in how they cast that vote,
Okay.
and how they kind of reflect whether they are seeing an increasing amount of dissension being more visible than sort of support being visible.
Yes.
And of course, we are all saying that he could actually have an endorsement to stay for 2 more terms, and that would make him
He goes
the
on till
longest.
2036 in that case,
Yeah,
and I
and
don't think
that
that will
would
surprise anyone at all. Okay,
that would make him.
okay, okay. I'm so sorry. We'll have to cut short this discussion because there's some